Batman, Spider-Man, the Man of Steel. Hang on to your tights, boys. You won't believe some of the new kids on the block. Comic books and the First Amendment. That's today's topic.
This is Freedom Speaks, dedicated to First Amendment rights, with analyst John Siegenthaler and moderator Carrie Brock.
And hello again. Comic books, they aren't just for kids anymore. There's a whole new sort of comic written for adults. It's called the zine. There are thousands of zine titles in print. Some have little to do with the traditional comic book view of truth, justice, and the American way. One in my hand here, it's called Boiled Angel. This got its creator into some mighty hot water.
My art usually was kind of different. I thought of it being different than other people's.
Michael Diana says he always used his art to shock people, even as a child.
One assignment was to do a family portrait, and I drew our whole family nude.
Nude people might be the tamest art you'll find in Diana's comic book series called Boiled Angel. Readers also see images of a boy raped by his dog, children adopted, then abused by their new parents, newborn babies tortured, then killed.
Most of the people that see the art, I think, understand it some and enjoy it.
I got to look at it, and I knew right away that what I was looking at was obscenity.
Former prosecutor Stuart Baggish says Michael Diana's art violates community standards.
Here we have another sort of monster being filleted by a disembodied head.
Baggish booked Michael Diana on obscenity charges, a crime with no precise definition. By law, folks in individual communities must decide what is obscene in their own hometowns.
Pinellas County does not have to accept what is acceptable in the bathhouses of San Francisco and the crack alleys in New York.
What's been marked as Defendants Exhibits 13.
In court, prosecutors had to prove that Boiled Angel, taken as a whole, has no serious literary, scientific, artistic, or political value.
And one of the issues that came out in the trial is it's not always the function of art to soothe or to simply depict comfortable situations. Sometimes art has to depict things that are very offensive, very horrifying.
The whole theme of this issue of number 8 was cannibalism.
Michael Diana says he gets his ideas from what he sees on the news. And if his art is shocking, it's only because it reflects what he sees happening in society every day.
This comic, Got Up My Ass, is about a boy that's molested by a priest. And I got that idea from seeing countless news reports about children being molested by priests and things.
One thing you can say about that material is it is absolutely worthless.
The jury agreed and took less than 90 minutes to convict Michael Diana for distributing obscenity.
And I had always thought I had the freedom to draw whatever I wanted to.
Diana went to jail for 4 days, was fined $3,000, and put on probation for 3 years. As part of his sentence also, the judge ordered him not to draw any more obscene art.
I actually went to jail for a drawing, and that's something I never thought I would actually have to go to jail for my artwork.
As you can see, Michael Diana is still drawing while he appeals his conviction. On our panel to discuss zines today and comics, Stuart Baggish. You just met him in that piece as the former prosecutor who handled the case against Michael Diana. Bert Joseph is counsel to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. He believes Diana's work is protected by the First Amendment. Paul Maurer is vice president of the National Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families. And sitting in for John Siegenthaler today, our First Amendment analyst, is Paul McMasters. Mr. Baggish, I know you have said in the past that you believe art or work like Michael Diana's exploits and victimizes his readers. Explain what you mean.
Well, the Supreme Court has held that obscenity doesn't fall within the purview of protection of the First Amendment because it is not speech. If you look closely at the standard the court presented for determining if material is obscene in Miller versus California in 1973, the three-pronged test calls for a pretty high level of proof. First, that the material according to contemporary community standards,
Yes.
is patently offensive
Yes.
in the way it portrays sexual conduct. Number two,
Whether the work depicts in an offensive way sexual conduct and whether it lacks literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. But my question is there a difference then between photographs and drawings? Who wants to pick up on that?
Well, let me just comment upon what was just said. I think Mike Diana's case will stand along with the witch hunts in Massachusetts at the beginning of our country. It's the first time in the history of our country in which an artist has been prosecuted and sentenced and jailed for the creation of his artistic work.
pardon me, might I interrupt?
Yeah.
He was
Sure.
not charged, he wasn't prosecuted, and he was not jailed for the creation of the work. It was the public distribution
Yes. Okay.
of the work. They're two entirely different things. Nobody ever cared whether he created it. It's the distribution.
I'm telling
that is
you
illegal.
that in my view, that Mike Diana is the Bruegel of the 20th century. He picks things out of the newspaper. The fact that life is much more grotesque than what he draws, and what he draws is an offensive depiction, and it's meant to be offensive, just like Bruegel's work was meant to be offensive, and just like Bruegel's work was meant to shock people into the realization of what the evils of society are.
I've seen Michael Diana's work, and I've seen a lot of other obscene material over the years, and 9 out of 10 juries across this country would find that that would be obscene material. There are a few major markets that would be questionable in, but I would be willing to say 9 out of 10 juries would find that material obscene. It's very clearly obscene material.
All right, if it's obscene material or is it art, that's an important question, Paul. And if juries are finding it obscene, aren't they also becoming art critics?
Well, that's quite possible, but that's their right, and it's the right of a prosecutor to bring that question to them. And I guess I would have to accept Paul's assessment that 9 out of 10 juries probably would find it obscene or reprehensible. The First Amendment was written to protect the speech of the minority, the speech that offends, the speech of the radical and the rascal. It wasn't to protect the majoritarian view of speech.
But the First Amendment was never intended, and still is not intended, by the vast majority of courts, and the Supreme Court for 30 plus years, to be absolutist in nature. There are laws against obscenity, there are laws against child pornography, there are laws against libel and slander, defamation of character, and you can't scream fire in a crowded theater. Why? Because there are competing values, and the First Amendment is not absolutist in nature. And so the court, liberal, moderate, and conservative courts over the last 30 years have all said the same thing. There is material that is not protected that we have a higher interest in protecting our children.
Mr. Baggish, can we connect obscenity and violent crime in any way?
I really can't answer that question. I do know one of the experts that testified in Michael Diana's case, Dr. Sidney Marin, a psychologist, he examined Ted Bundy and Danny Rowling, the serial killer responsible for the Gainesville student murders. And he testified in the trial that obscenity of the type that Boiled Angel constitutes is a starting point for paraphiliacs, sexual sadists. They move through a desensitization process where they move from
First it's
the
comic
drawn
books,
work,
and then it's pictures, and then
the
it's
pictures,
something
then
else,
the
and then-
films, and then the acting out.
Well, then, do
is a
we
common
have
syndrome.
reason to believe that Michael Diana is turning his readers into monsters? That number one, he is creating monsters.
There's no question that's a possibility, because the research over, again, the last 30 years since the obscenity explosion in this country, there's a ream of research that indicates a nexus between obscene material, child pornography, and even softcore pornography and sexual violence.
Research is always a tricky word.
I don't want to get into a debate, because I think, in my view, and in the view of the scientific community, the statement just made by Paul is not true. In the publication in 1995, The Causes of and Prevention of Violence by the National Science Foundation, absolutely categorically says that there is no evidence that any kind of explicit sexual material leads to antisocial conduct. But let's
They
not
said
get.
the same thing about cigarettes for how many decades as well. The issue is...
Can I finish my thought? But one of the things, you talk about obscenity and Boiled Angel. Now, I'm a lot more conservative than the good people in Florida because I looked at Boiled Angel. It's offensive, it's crude, it's difficult to handle, but unlike the jury and the judge and the prosecutor, it did not appeal to my prurient interest. Of course, that's one of the elements of the violation of obscenity. I cannot understand that anybody who looks at Boiled Angel can reach the conclusion that it appeals to their prurient or sexual interest.
The point of the prosecution in this case is that it doesn't appeal to the average person. Through Michigan, we established through diagnostic testimony that it appeals to deviant personalities, more particularly sexual sadists. Michael Diana states so himself in an interview with Gerard Schaefer, that he himself believes the works contained in Boiled Angel appeal to sexual sadists.
And Paul, how can we possibly defend anything that celebrates this kind of violence, particularly against women?
I don't know that it celebrates it, and I certainly would feel uncomfortable in the position of defending it, except from the viewpoint that if we don't recognize that we have a real problem of separating society into deviant groups and undeviant groups, and extrapolating from there that we can arbitrarily prosecute the creative process, I think that is a dangerous road to head down, and I think we should be very careful about it.
But the issue here is twofold. One is that you have an issue of harm, and that's the centerpiece of the understanding of why child pornography, material harmful to minors, obscene material, is outside of the protection of the First Amendment in this country.
Wait,
and secondly,
is Playboy or Penthouse or Hustler harmful to minors?
Yes, it is, and it's illegal for minors. That material is not legal for minors.
That absolutely is not true. Playboy, in 45 years of publication, has never once in any jurisdiction been adjudicated to be obscene, pornographic, harmful to minors, or illegal in any other way.
It is
but
illegal,
let me talk about
illegal for a minor to purchase a Playboy magazine.
That is not true.
It is true.
Well, all right. I happen to be counsel for Playboy magazine, and I'll tell you that I'm familiar with every single incident where that accusation has been made, and it has never been sustained.
Let me hop in just for a second, and we'll let you finish that thought when I get away from this bit of video I want to show our viewers. Michael Diana's zine is self-published. It's a very low-tech effort, but one of the more polished, on the more polished end of the scale, you can find a lot of pornographic comics, glossy covers and all, beautiful art. Many comic book stores, though, have devised their own methods of keeping these things out of young hands.
This kind of stuff you can't put on the shelf.
Reagan McGee volunteers at this comic store in his spare time, and he says the store doesn't sell many adult-oriented comics, but the ones they do.
We don't have them out, and we don't sell them to people who aren't old enough to buy them.
Reagan says most of these titles have to be specially ordered by customers.
And Penthouse Men's Adventure Comics, these get real nasty.
And what they actually have on hand?
Our whole stock amounts to just a little pile.
Reagan says the store gets few complaints about the comics they do carry, and he's not too worried about causing a controversy by selling them.
But as long as you keep them back where nobody can grab them, where only you can get to them, and pretty careful with who you sell them to, there's not really a risk involved.
So doesn't that tell us it's pretty tough for people under the age of 18, i.e., 12-year-old boys, to get a hold of this stuff?
No, it's not difficult at all. In fact, Mr. Joseph understands that Playboy markets its material to minors through their trading cards. I went to the VSDA trade show 2 years ago. I went to the Playboy booth, and the gentleman shoved into my hand Playboy trading cards. He said, "This is the hottest thing we've had in a long time." I said, "How are you marketing these?" He said, We're selling these in comic book stores and baseball trading card shops."
Do you know what he's talking about here?
Well, maybe he thought you were a minor because of the attitude you had, but let me say this, that Playboy does not market to minors. It says on the cover of every Playboy magazine that it's entertainment for men. The idea that it's marketed at comic book shops and their cards, you probably haven't been into a comic store lately. Comic book stores, the purchasers of comic books are adults, mostly. We're not talking about Archie now. We're talking about contemporary comics. But the interesting thing about your enthusiasm for the protection of children, Boiled Angel would have been seen by 7 people, I suppose, but for the prosecution. Mike Diana is now a Mike Diana is now a cult figure. His work is being collected all over the country.
His art is being sold in New York.
His art is being sold in New York. And it's you've created a marketing device for Boiled Angel and the Mike Dianas of the world. And
What do you say to that? What do you say to that?
I say, first of all, the premises are flawed. Many more than 7 people would have consumed it. He had a distribution list that actually spanned the globe. It went out as far from Germany to Australia and all points in between.
For a total of 300 copies of it.
Now, that is what Michael Diana maintained in his trial. We only had to prove 1 sale within the borders of Pinellas County, so that's what we focused upon. Everything else would have been surplus to the trial. But in fact, the distribution was much wider than that.
What about the internet now? I mean,
He does have a homepage on the internet where he is putting this material online.
Is there a doubt in your mind that the interest in Boiled Angel and Mike Diana has increased as a result of your prosecution?
I don't doubt that. I think
It's
he's moved
banned
more
in
into
Boston
the forefront, and people are celebrating him for the time being, but only in
Because he's a persecuted artist, and persecuted artists always get celebrated.
I mean, what are you going to do about his stuff on the internet?
Absolutely nothing. There's really nothing I can do. It's a jurisdictional quandary when you're talking about the internet.
Go ahead.
I'd like to pick up on your point on the internet, because today, through the internet, we have a problem that we've never faced before, and that is, in the 60s, you had the advent of the adult bookstores in this country, 3,000 to 5,000 XXX bookstores in the sleazy sections of town. In the 1980s, with the VCR revolution, you had an explosion to 25,000 video outlets for hardcore pornography, and now you've got the internet, where any 6, 8, 10, 12-year-old who are the computer savvy of our culture, having access to child pornography, bestiality, torture, mutilation, every form of pornography, free, easy, and within a minute.
Paul, I guess you need a 6-year-old to help you surf the net, because we've had conversations about this. How easy has it been for you to find pornography on
Well,
the
I
internet?
guess maybe I'm really
And
stupid,
zine
but
art.
I've used this the search engines to try to find this, because I've been on many programs and had many people assert that a 6-year-old can get to this stuff real quickly. And I worked for 2 days, not solid for every single hour, but I worked for 2 days, and finally, after 2 days and a half, I was able to get up some pornography, I guess what would be considered pornography, which was a very blurry, distant picture of Brad Pitt. So,
If I had
Email that to me, will ya?
Who was apparently disrobed.
But if I had a computer in front of me, I could get you bestiality and child pornography in under a minute.
I use the internet every day. I use it in my work. I use it as an indispensable tool. And I have never found pornography. I find the sites, but then it's just advertising for an adult bulletin board and or catalogs that were available only to adults.
Go to the Usenet.
I think there's the one thing that maybe Paul and I can agree with, and I think that it's true that modern communication has expanded and proliferated the availability. But I think Paul's solution is wrong. We should go back to the printing press, Paul. That was, of course, considered to be absolutely the end of civilization, because now literacy and books, rather than being available for the elite, were available to the masses. Every time that there is a new medium, be it movies, be it comic books, be it the printing press, there is an extraordinary explosion of censorship. And the reason is because censorship is the most elite fact in our society. The censors never themselves think that they are hurt by this. It's always the other people who can't handle the material.
Let's talk about censorship just for a second, especially as it relates to the internet and the kind of material we're discussing here today. I mean, there was a case, I think in 95 or 94, earlier in the 90s, where someone was distributing pornography from California, but somebody else downloaded it in Memphis, and he was prosecuted successfully. And that goes to community standards. The Supreme Court has given every community in the country the power to decide what their own community standards are. And doesn't that, Paul, did anyone respond to this, fuzz the question a little bit?
It does. It does and it doesn't. It's a very unusual area of the law, but at the same time, in a sense, it's democracy at its finest, because you give the society, the community, the right to determine its own quality of life and the standard of decency in its community. And that really puts the burden on the citizens, which we think is right. We as an organization, the National Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families, we oppose censorship. in every sense. Censorship is prior restraint by the government.
But
we oppose
would
censorship.
you try and ban Playboy and Hustler and Penthouse?
No. We think there are reasonable regulations, constitutionally upheld regulations to protect children from harmful material. And we think there's a reasonable solution. There is a reasonable balance between the government regulation.
Whenever we
and
talk about children
responsibility.
with this issue, it is automatic that we all respond, yes, of course, you're right, children, children. But is it just about children in the case of these things?
Can I just say this, Paul, that the Supreme Court has said time and time again that you can't make available to the adult public only material that is suitable for children. Children do not determine the standard by which visual and literary material and artistic material is available. So let's forget about children, and the censorship issue is always, let's take care of a social problem by censorship. It doesn't work, it never can work, and it certainly can't work on the internet. And incidentally now, of course, it's a subject of another show as to the telecom bill and the restraining order against the indecency provisions of the telecom bill, and that's yet to be determined by the court.
Michael Diana's number one, who's next? I mean, in 1995, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, which has 7,000 clients all, let me finish my question, which has 7,000 clients all across the country, ended up defending about 10 of them. Might we see more in the future?
Well, I think especially if this goes forward on appeal and is in the favor of the prosecution, obviously you're going to see more. But we've seen enough, in my view, right now in the sense that we have people across this country in 8 different states right now facing jail terms for decades for selling comic books, and in some cases to adults. I want to respond to the thing about children. You're absolutely right. Nobody wants children to get a hold of this. First of all, it is the parents' responsibility. Secondly, we have to keep in mind that what we do in the name of the children often has very bad consequences for others, in the sense that less than a third of the households in the United States have children in them, and even fewer than that have children under 12. So we're to the extent that we get into a situation of trying to ban literature or anything else for less than a third of the people in a job that the parents really should be doing, we really get into trouble, I think.
You're itching to respond to this.
Yeah, this whole alarmist response that what's next, who's next to be thrown in jail for distributing obscenity, whatever. That is really an unrealistic response to what happened with Michael Diane and what happens with anybody, because the magic of Miller versus California is that it is community specific. The state of Florida versus Michael Diana case has no precedential value beyond the boundaries of Pinellas County, Florida at the time. The community standards of Pinellas County vary widely from other communities, even within the same state. The same geographic area, region.
You're saying Pinellas County would have more conservative community standards.
William, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the magic of Miller versus California is that it allows the individual communities to decide for themselves what is decent. If I want to live in Pinellas County in an atmosphere where there is some common decency, that's something I ought to be able to do, and not have the moral atmosphere of a community like Las Vegas or New Orleans or San Francisco or New York.
You're going to get a lot of mail now from New Orleans and Las Vegas. Let's stop for a second. Let me just stop just for a second, because we need to look at the history of comic books. And I have some video that can show you that right now. We do certainly seem to go in cycles with all of these things, and certainly comic books part of that cycle. If you're a baby boomer, you or someone you know may share the experience of Louis Fulmisi.
Roughly, we'd had maybe a couple thousand comics.
Louis Fulmisi's mother gave all of his comic books away after she read a book by social critic Frederick Wortham that linked Fulmisi's pastime to the decay of the nation's youth.
He went on lecture tours all around the country, putting down how crime comics are what's causing the juvenile delinquency.
Fulmisi says violent images like these are what got the comics in trouble.
At that time, that was the time of McCarthyism.
The question is, did the Civil Liberties Union...
And like the McCarthy hearings, the Senate formed a committee to investigate comics. Fearing censorship, the comic publishers took matters into their own hands. They put a seal on comic books, indicating the material was safe for young readers.
So what do we learn from that, I wonder? I mean, you say, Stuart, that that the Diana case in Florida has no ramifications for America at large, but
well,
that
let's talk
shows
about
us
the
otherwise.
community standards, and I think that what Stuart says is exactly right, but there's one other community that Paul is very familiar with, and that is a community of the organizations that his organization and others are creating in communities, as is their right and obligation under the way they see this as a social problem. But it does sort of give you a different kind of community that gets generated in different communities. It's an overall agenda that is quite defensible, and I give credit to them. But the problem with that is that we are destined to keep repeating what we've just seen.
Is that what we learned? Is that what we learned from
think,
history?
Yeah, there's two things I want to say about community standards. In the first case after Miller versus California, the Supreme Court of Georgia upheld in a 4-3 decision the obscenity of the movie Carnal Knowledge. In an appeal before the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Rehnquist ruled that, wait a minute, we didn't really mean communities have an absolute right to censor matters that is otherwise protected by the First Amendment. And what Stuart failed to mention is that the court has also said that in the issue of literary and artistic value, that is not up to the citizens of Pinellas County. That is determined on a national standard, not on a local standard. And let me say that artists like Mike Diana have always held up a mirror to society to make you see the worst parts of the society in an effort for the society to come to grips with its own problems. I think censorship as a method of control of social problems has never worked, won't work now, can never work in the future, and it is inconsistent with our values that each person that makes those decisions for him or herself.
I'm out of time. Thank you so much to Stuart Baggish and to Paul Maurer, to Burton Joseph, and also to Paul today. Thank you to Paul McMasters, to be our First Amendment analyst, sitting in for John Siegenthaler. And now it's your turn to be heard. Some time to share feedback from Freedom Speaks viewers. David March saw our story on an unlicensed radio station that calls itself Free Radio Berkeley. One effect, he writes, was to make me want to support a pirate radio station that broadcasts material I dislike. I want all of us to have access to the airwaves unhindered by the government bureaucrats. Devin Hawes responds to our cyber porn program. He says many bulletin board operators make phone calls to make sure the potential users are old enough. This, along with user passwords, keeps all but the very oldest of minors off porn-based bulletin board systems. Now we'd like to hear from you as well. Here's how to get in touch with us. Send your email to speak@fac.org. Visit our internet webpage at www.fac.org. Our postal address, Freedom Speaks, 1207 18th Avenue South, Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37212. And that's our program. As we close now, some other thoughts about regulation of comic book content. See you next week.
I don't want my 14-year-old son being able to purchase pornography in the guise of a comic book only because it's a drawing instead of a photograph.
With comic books, you should probably tend to try to rate them as you do with movies, since you know, the majority of comic books are intended for kids.
I feel it's a form of freedom of speech, and I think that kids have a right to view it as long as it's not, demeaning to anyone or nothing like that. I don't think it should be a problem.
Certainly, we regulate some of the magazines that are sold, some of the adult magazines. They're behind the counter or whatever, and whether it's a comic book written in comic book form or another magazine, it certainly should be kept from the hands of young children.
I think the foreign government has far too much of a hand in what we do and think now. I think we should be allowed to think for ourselves what we like or what we don't like. And just, if we don't like the magazine, put it down.